Greetings, this is Charles Darwin, and I'm speaking to you from the summer of 2021 in Oklahoma. Now, here in Oklahoma, the summers are usually very hot, and sometimes this heat continues for as long as 4 months. Not every day. So, for instance, today it's only about 85 degrees, which isn't bad for Oklahoma. There are times, however, when the heat can become very extreme. For instance, 10 years ago, in 2011, there was a period of 2 to 3 weeks where the daily temperatures were in excess of 110 to 115 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, to my European subscribers, hi, guy in Denmark, that is 46 degrees C. And so that can happen, and it happens frequently enough in Oklahoma that most of the houses have air conditioning. It is a worthwhile investment in Oklahoma to have air conditioning. See, we're used to those kinds of temperatures. But right now, during the summer of 2021, there is a historic heat wave going on in the Pacific Northwest of the United States, where they're having similar temperatures and for as long. But it's a disaster for them. Why is it? Why is it that temperatures that are more frequent in Oklahoma are a disaster for the Pacific Northwest? And that's because, as they have said online, that why should they invest in air conditioning if they're only going to use it for maybe 2 or 3 days during the summer? It's not worth the investment in an air conditioning system. And so many of them have chosen not to have air conditioning. They can just do like me, sit in the shade, have a seltzer, product placement, and then just put up with it for a couple of days. Well, we all know that already, but what I'm here to give you is a plant story. You see, because plants face many of the challenges that we do. So for instance, when plants are making their food, they have to open their little tiny microscopic pores to allow carbon dioxide into the leaf, where it is captured by the enzyme rubisco, which I told you about in an earlier video. And once it's captured, then eventually it is made into sugar, which is the basis of all the plant's food and all the food in the world. So it's a very important thing. So that's why plants have to open their little microscopic pores. Now, when they do so, however, as soon as the carbon dioxide comes in, water vapor diffuses out. And to a certain extent, this is okay, it cools the leaf off, but if there's a drought going on, or if the heat is excessive, then the leaf starts to lose too much water. And if it does so, it will overheat, it will wilt, it may die. So that is a disaster from the point of view of the leaf. As a matter of fact, it's a hell of a choice, because the leaf has to, it's caught between starving to death if it closes its stomata and lets in no carbon dioxide, or if it opens its stomata and allows water vapor to go out of the leaf. Anyway, is there any solution to this problem? Well, it turns out there is a solution, but it is not a cheap one. About 1 out of every 5 plant species has, in addition to rubisco system, they have a second system by which they're able to take carbon dioxide out of the air. And they use this second system in 2 different ways. First of all, many dryland grasses, for example, they're able to close their microscopic pores down almost all the way, and this, having 2 systems, allows them to use the little tiny bit of carbon dioxide that they have in their leaf air spaces very efficiently. And so that's one way. The other way is what succulent plants such as cactus have, is that they open their little pores at night when it's not as hot and when it's more humid, and they take in their carbon dioxide. Then they close their pores and make the carbon dioxide into sugar during the daytime. Now, that sounds like an ideal solution. Why don't all plants do that? Well, it's because the plants that have 2 rather than 1 phase of photosynthesis, those plants don't have it made in the shade. You see, because those 2 systems are more expensive to construct and maintain than just 1 system. And so there's a huge cost to having the system that allows them to survive in hot, dry conditions. And so what we have here is some of the plants that don't experience hot, dry conditions very often. For instance, the plants that are down in the shade, it's not worth the cost to them, and they only have 1 system. But many of the plants that live out in dry, hot conditions and frequently experience trauma from that, they have two systems. And so it's worth the cost for them. And that's exactly the same thing that is facing the people of Oklahoma and the people of the Pacific Northwest. In Oklahoma, it is hot often enough that it's worth the investment in air conditioning, whereas in the Pacific Northwest, it's hot seldom enough that it's not worth the investment. So you have people in two different places making two different choices of how to invest. And that's exactly what plants do also. You see, you can understand the growth of plants and the way they live their lives by understanding them in the same way that you would understand our own lives. Because you see, they face many of the same challenges that we do, and so they have costs versus benefits, they have investment versus return, the same way that we do. And once you understand this about plants, then they seem more like interesting living beings, which is what they are, than they would if you just casually glance at them. This is Charles Darwin telling home, and